This is the Prophetic Cutting Edge podcast, hosted by Joshua Snowpeck and Phil and Laura Lee Colley, brought to you by Destiny Strategies Prophetic Ministry, where we make it simple to hear God's voice to empower you for your purpose. Hey everyone, welcome to the Prophetic Cutting Edge podcast, where we make it simple to hear God's voice and empower you for your purpose. I'm your host, Joshua Snowpeck, with Phil and Laura Lee Colley. Thanks for tuning in to the very first episode of the Prophetic Cutting Edge. We're excited to launch this space where we talk about all things prophetic, practical and powerful. Just so you know, this episode was actually recorded before our official Facebook Live launch or our live launch. And so why would we do that? Well, we have a few episodes that we wanted to put up in this space already so that you could have something to listen to beforehand, and maybe something that you can come back to and revisit. We didn't want you to have to feel like you had to wait, but that you could just dive in straight away. So today we're going to kick things off. And I'm here with two wonderful people who've been walking in prophetic ministry for several decades. They're mentors, teachers, very powerful voices in this space. And many of you already know Phil and Laura Lee Colley. Welcome, guys.
Hey, great to be here. This is so exciting.
Yeah, thanks for having us. Yeah, it's great.
Yeah, so we're all super excited about launching this. And so why don't we start with a little bit of a recap and have a chat about what's been happening. You know, it's July 2025. We're sort of halfway through the year. What's been happening? What have you guys been up to this year?
Yeah, we've had a full year already this year.
It's been
amazing. So what have we been up to? Lots of things.
We had a February, we had a conference, which we have pretty well every year. And that was exciting. There was a lot of great things happened there, and we actually launched a book.
We launched a new book.
Our
third book is now. It was launched in February, and actually at the conference, and that was exciting. At the Catch You Up draft, our book is called "See the Signs and Wonders." Through prophecy, dreams, and numbers.
That's awesome. That's so exciting, and to launch a book is no small thing. And I'm sure those people that have written books and launched books before would understand the effort and the time and the planning that goes into that. So that's really awesome. And do you want to just share just briefly a little bit, maybe one or two little things or gems that were covered in that conference, just for people to maybe have an idea of what maybe they missed out on if they didn't get to come along?
Yeah, there was a general theme. Like we had our wonderful speakers, Faylene and Patrick from Ireland, and there was a general theme on understanding our purpose and even being empowered for that, understanding God's view in that way.
Yeah, how to move forward in that process. Because some of us, we know what our purpose is, but we're not sure how to move forward in it. And I think that's part of it. It's not just hearing, but we've got to be able to apply what we hear so we can go to that next stage. Yeah,
no, that's very very important to know how to apply those things.
And Josh, you actually you did a session on and as part of the book for the See the Signs and Wonders, you did a session on that as well, and we had so much feedback on it. That was in some ways your inaugural prophetic, like your conference speaking, wasn't it, in a way? You've always emceed, but now that you had to change your hat.
It was a first for me, and I really enjoyed the opportunity, and I believe people got something out of it and found it helpful. So and that was very exciting, and just a general great time to be able to help and to bring that message of that. You know, being prophetic and hearing God's voice is it never goes out of fashion, and it's always something that we need in our day-to-day lives.
And you know, with the See the Signs and Wonders book, we only printed 100 hard copies because we know a lot of people do more ebooks, and especially some of our audience are not just in person because of our Zoom events. But actually we sold out of those pretty quickly. We had to create a second print. So it's now in action. We're now been releasing those.
So that's good. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, very popular books. And we're actually just on that. Actually, we'll come back to that later. We'll come back to the book later. We'll talk more about that at the end. So let's get started. Let's get into our topic today. So our topic for this episode is, what is prophecy, and how can I be sure God is speaking to me and through me?
That's good. Good question. I love that.
Yeah. So I might throw some questions over to you guys, and let's just go into this topic and pull this apart a little bit, and hopefully, as people are listening, they're able to take something away where they can understand more about what prophecy is, and just develop that ability to hear God.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good.
So, what is prophecy, and how is that different from just being encouraging or hearing a message or some preaching?
Yeah, I guess to clarify, we're probably talking more about 1 Corinthians 14 prophecy. So you could say there's lots of different prophecy in the Bible. There's end time prophecy. There's, that the whole Bible is a prophecy in a sense. But I guess what we're talking about today is more the 1 Corinthians 14 and 1 Corinthians 12 prophecy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So prophecy is really hearing from God for ourselves. In the topic we're talking about here. So how do we hear from God? Prophecy is just hearing from God and really becoming familiar with that, I think. And that's why it's important to practice. But prophecy is really just hearing from God. That can be in many forms. God might speak to you in a audible voice. If that happens, it's probably going to be a bit scary, because that's normally what happened in the Bible. But it could be a spontaneous thought. It could be a picture in our mind. It could be a nudging on the inside, a sensing or a feeling. So God might just speak to you through the Bible. Some verse jumps out at you and you think, wow, I've never seen that before. And it sort of stays with you. And so God will highlight these things. And oftentimes people say, well, God told me to do this. But as a general rule, it's not a big booming voice or a signpost that stands out. It's just a knowing on the inside. So in a sense, it's that direct communication from God to the individual that they recognize that as a way that God speaks.
It's good. And it might have different audiences in a sense. So it might be just for, I believe that as we activate the gift of prophecy, that we're activating hearing God's voice for ourselves, but we also might activate hearing God's voice for someone else with the right biblical guidelines, or we might be bringing a message or a prophecy for a group or a church or a whole congregation dynamic or a movement even. So yeah, it's important to note that it's not just to one area or one audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's some really good points. And I think like you guys were saying, that it can just be as simple as a thought. And I suppose being humans, we can find that easy to dismiss, or we might think that, that's just a thought that we're having, which sort of leads into the next question I wanted to ask. How can someone tell the difference between their own thoughts and the voice of God?
That's good.
That's a good question. And I think that's something that everybody struggles with, Josh. Is it me or is it God? And I think the simplest way to understand that is to understand the very nature of God. God always encourages, builds us up, edifies us, comforts us, because that's his nature. And so if we understand the nature of God, the Bible says God is love, and that's the basis of everything that involved with the prophetic, involved with God. It's all about his love coming through in what we do. And so the nature of God, and if it's usually, if the way that God would speak to us is via his nature. So it'll be a gentle word as a general rule. Sometimes it can be different, but as for the general congregation, for the want of a better term, it's a gentle nature of God that comes through to confirm that it's his word. And if we give someone an encouraging word, we're not doing any harm anyway, because that's the nature of God, to build people up.
We find in our training that's one of the biggest things. Is it me or is it God? And I think that it requires faith and practice, because we get to know God. It's like God speaks in a spontaneous thought into our own thought process. So that's the confusing part, because it's in our own mind and but it's spontaneous. So we, the understanding of 1 Corinthians 14:3, he who prophesies speaks edification, exhortation, and comfort. And as Phil already said, there are, God always wants to encourage us. I guess that is one of the first things to be aware of. And I think actually ourselves, we're always hard on ourselves. We're people are their own worst critics most of the time, especially when we're wanting to hear from God and get encouragement or guidance. So I think that's understanding the nature of God. And actually, and even because we create these environments where people come to practice, it's on Zoom or in our prophetic days, and the guidelines, as we said, as he who prophesies speaks edification, exhortation, and comfort. If you stick to that, the worst thing you're going to do is bring an encouraging word to someone, which probably is God anyway, because it's the nature of God.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like I guess the biblical guidelines of what prophecy is. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Well, it's the nature of God coming through. So it's more than that, but the prophecy talks about our now, our past, our future. It foretells as well. But it always must come via the nature of God. God, even when we read things in the Bible and you think, oh, well, it's a God of wrath there, but God has always given plenty of warning along the way before something happened. And our role as people who hear from God, we've got those guidelines to use as a reference in 1 Corinthians 14:3, edification, exhortation, and comfort. And if we stick to that, we follow the Bible on that basis, it's a safe place to be.
And so I guess like the flip side to that would be, if it's not those things, would it be safe to say that it's probably not prophecy if it's not edifying and encouraging the person?
If we're characterizing prophecy as hearing from God, which is what it is, sometimes the word prophecy can suggest to different people, depending on their background, that it's some really big thing that is that no one else can understand. But yeah, based on that, God wants to speak to his people. Yes, it can be your own understanding or your own voice condemning you, because we are our own worst critic, as I said, but also other people's voices or other people's whatever, that's circumstances or things of the past, or even teachings and understandings, and maybe even the enemy trying to actually rob from you. That John 10:10 says the enemy comes to rob, kill, and destroy. So he's at work to disable you and discourage you, not encourage you.
And I think if we understand the nature of God as being the fruits of the Spirit, then the devil will come in and wants to condemn and make us feel guilty, and no, you can't hear from God, and all the downers, if you like, that want to detract from what God wants to do. And so it's understanding the nature of the enemy as well as the nature of God, because that makes it easier to understand who's speaking.
Yeah, no, that's good. I really like that concept of aligning it with the fruits of the Spirit. That makes perfect sense, because that's, like you said, it's the nature of God. And so if God's speaking, it's going to be according to his nature, which is love and patience and peace and kindness, and God's always wanting to encourage us. So another question I have is, we talked before about the idea that God can speak to us just through like a simple thought or an impression or a picture. I guess for a lot of people, and I'd probably say myself included, is a lot of the time when we're receiving from God, it can almost feel like we're making it up, or it's like, am I just imagining this? Is this really God? What would you say about that?
Mm. I think some of that that's definitely faith. Faith is an uncomfortable zone, and one of what we call our activation scriptures, the Hebrews 11:6. It's impossible to please God without faith. So when you've got faith, you're saying, okay, I'm going to ask God a question according to His nature. He's going to respond to me, and therefore also practice. So again, that's what it's so important that we provide opportunity for people to practice, because that's really the only way that brings strength, and you can do it at home. Of course, you can practice at home. There's in a way of journaling, asking God questions and trusting His nature.
Yeah, and I think that practice is key because it builds confidence. See, we develop our faith by practice. The more we practice stepping out in faith, that will grow, and we become more confident, not in our faith, but in that God will show up because He's done it before. And it's the same with anything that we learn. We learn to develop growing by practice. And that's why it is important to practice moving in spiritual gifts. We practice everything else, but we don't practice moving in spiritual gifts.
And it's actually biblical, isn't it?
Yeah.
Hebrews 5:14 says it's by reason of use that our spiritual senses are matured.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I was just, as you were talking about that, I was just, sorry, as you were both talking about that, I was just thinking about when I first learnt to drive a car, and like I needed to practice. Like it was for everyone's safety and my own safety that I learnt to practice. Like I didn't want to go out on the main road without practice. We're practicing on the back streets. And I guess in some ways, like you guys provide a space and a place for people to practice and to be trained in a safe environment, right? Where it's almost like they're not going to be put out on the main road just yet. We can practice on those little back streets or the side streets, and where maybe there's not so much pressure. Do you want to share a bit more about the importance of creating that safe environment?
Yeah, look, I think it's key, Josh, to have those safe environments where you can step out, have a go, and learn to become more confident, learn to recognize how God speaks to you as an individual. And that will help us to develop that for whatever it is that we want to do in life. Whether that's missions, run a business, family relationships, whatever. It applies to everything.
Yeah. We've had, as you know, as many people know, we've run these prophetic schools for many decades now, since 1993, but it's interesting because we have so many different people comes from different backgrounds, come through our schools. Some stay and some hang around and want to do it many times. And there's business people, and there's pastors, and there's people that don't know, think they have a call, but discover that they do. And so we've had people say so many times, and this always surprises me. They say, I feel like I've been born again, because all of a sudden something's unlocked in them, and they've unlocked the prophetic gift, they've activated it and practiced it. And so
I think amazing. It helps to develop the relationship with God because we're seeing Him in a different light. We're spending, because we do a lot of activations in our schools and our training days, that we do a lot of activations, and that practice builds that relationship because we're spending time listening to God and understanding how He speaks to us. And I only get pictures. Well, I'm not getting those anymore, but why don't I listen? Okay, I'm going to listen, and I might get a spontaneous thought. Get a sensing or an impression that I'm not used to that. So now I'm learning new ways to develop my relationship with God, like any human relationship. The more time you spend with someone, the better you get to know them.
Yeah.
Mm.
And some
Yeah.
people,
Sorry. Yeah, you go. Yeah.
some people feel like, are you focusing on just developing the gifts on the doing, but it actually doesn't end up being that. It's what we focus on is our relationship with God, and the developing the gift by default causes us to hear God's voice, know how He speaks. So it's actually building relationship, not just building the gifts.
Mm.
That makes sense.
It's not just one. Yeah, it's not just doing.
Mm.
Anybody can do, but in the doing you become.
Yeah.
So, if you're doing a trade, the more you do that, the more you become that tradesperson, because you've developed those skills in that scenario. And it's the same here. Yes, we want to build our relationship with God, but oftentimes it's developed by doing things, hearing Him, understanding what He's saying. How do I share that word? And being trained in those things to be able to bring that the right way. Sometimes we get a prophetic word and we think, gee, that was a great word, but it didn't come across. I wasn't comfortable in the way it was worded. It's not the word was wrong, it's the way it was delivered, perhaps. And sometimes we say, oh, I didn't like it, I'm not going to run with that, I'll just ignore it. But sometimes it's just a lack of training, perhaps, that has that delivery just hasn't been refined the right way. Because God will often speak to us, to me anyway, it might be just a spontaneous thing, it might be just a point form scenario, but sometimes that's our job, is to fill in those blanks in a prophecy so that it comes across and the delivery is more acceptable, if you like, for the person receiving that.
Yeah, that's some really good points there. And I think, there has been a lot of people in the past who've experienced prophecy that maybe wasn't delivered in the way that it should have been. And they have thrown that word out and said, oh, that's not for me, or that wasn't God, or, that doesn't apply to me. But it actually was God speaking, but it wasn't delivered in the right way or with that nature of God so that the person could receive it. So I guess what I'm hearing from what you're saying is that the delivery is just as important as the content.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Mm.
Yeah. I think that's what brings a lot of misunderstanding, sadly, the way it's brought, or and sometimes we can go, oh, that didn't feel right. And we've had, plenty of prophecies, even recently in the past, where it hasn't been delivered as well as it could be, but we're not going to throw it out. We're going to go, okay, God, what were you trying to say in this? But if we're people that are just learning to receive prophecy, don't be concerned if you do have a question mark, because God always brings confirmation. So there are times when we're going to just go, okay, I'll just put that on the shelf, and because it doesn't feel right, or maybe that person was practicing, because sometimes there can be what would seem like a wrong prophecy or an error when a person is practicing their accuracy, because we encourage that, and sort of not brought quite the way it should be. And so sometimes it might not be a false prophecy, but may have just been brought incorrectly, or not as good as it could have been.
Yeah. And I think the delivery, Josh, as you say, is very important. It's like anything, I know you're a teacher. If you don't teach a certain way, people won't receive it. If you're harsh with the students, then they don't want to receive it. They would rather, hide in the corner or do something completely different. It's the same with preaching. If you don't, you can preach a great message, or you can preach the same message in a way that's pretty harsh to accept. So we've got our delivery again represents the nature of God. Where if it's the message, it needs to be brought with love and kindness and gentleness to the people, so that they can grow in whatever is being delivered. It's the same with prophecy.
And I wasn't going to go there in this episode, but I feel like it's leading in that direction. So, there's a lot of people out there who would say, I hear from God. I can do that. I'm very good at hearing God, and I know how to prophesy. So I don't really need to practice because I already know how to do that. Would you say that based on what we've talked about and the importance of getting the delivery right, that practice does need to take place?
Yeah, we in our schools we have very seasoned prophetic people come and practice because there's always something that God wants to develop, and normally by the time someone's quite seasoned, they understand the maturing process. In some ways, that's an immature concept to say, oh, I don't need that practice. But then when someone matures, they go, oh wow, I just want to be in that environment because I can develop so much more accuracy and understanding of what God's saying and doing. And I think that's important in this hour, in this time in history, because God wants people to be so confident. And he also wants to develop our spiritual authority. So that comes into place as well as we position ourselves to hear God's voice and practice hearing him.
I think whatever we do in God requires practice. The Bible talks about practice. Practice spiritual gifts, desire spiritual gifts, but especially that you may prophesy. Well, that takes practice. It talks about developing the gift, and it doesn't matter. I think we all need to be teachable all the time. There's always something we can learn. We might hear this preacher talking about a particular subject, but he's only got part of the truth. Someone else will have some things that he might say exactly the same things, but I get it from this guy because of what he said. But I didn't quite catch it there because I'm still growing in that particular thing. And it's the same with anything that we do. We need to be open to continue to be taught, because there's always something more that we can learn. We can learn from people. We can learn from God. We can develop our spiritual gifts. We can develop growing in the fruit of the Spirit, because none of us have made it. There's always more.
Yeah. And I think in terms of because you guys do training, like in other areas of life, if someone was to go to, say, university or something like that, or they went and did a course, they might only do that once and then they go, oh, I've got that. I don't need to go back and do that again. But for you guys, it's like you seem to get people that have done your training, and they'll come back again, go through the training again, come back again, go through the training again. And so there doesn't seem to be this, I've been there, done that, don't need to do it again. And I guess as I think about that, it's sort of like, in other areas of life where we do like a course or whatever it may be, it's sort of like we're filling our head with a lot of knowledge, isn't it? But what you guys do, it's very practical. So I guess, do you want to talk a bit about the importance of that, and I guess how maybe what you do is a little bit different to, I guess, the way other people have done things in the past?
Well, we like to have a practical side to whatever we do, Josh. And so, and as I was saying, there's always something else to learn. There's always some way to improve what we're doing, and to be able to recognize God speaking to us in another form. God talks to us all the time. We don't read the Bible once and say, oh, I've read that. Oh, I know that. I read that before. We might have read it, but have we actually applied it the right way? Are we fully understanding of what that's saying? And I think it's the same here. The practical application helps us to grow and develop our relationship, as we talked about before, so that we are growing to be those better people. We're growing in our knowledge and understanding of who God is and the nature of God.
I think practicing spiritual gifts in general, which gift of prophecy is, it's part of the 1 Corinthians 12 as well, that words of knowledge, words of wisdom, gift of discerning of spirits. I think it's people always come alive when they find themselves in the room and discover it's actually not just for a chosen few that have the stage. It's actually for the everyday person, everyday believer, to develop all these gifts. And again, it opens the access to God. And so we love to, part of our mandate is providing that opportunity to just come and practice, be honed, and we have many conversations with people in the way of, I felt I had a prophecy and I tried to deliver it this way, or something was misunderstood, and so all those sort of stuff can be workshopped. And even I'll throw in a few things here that we're going to cover in the future, like things like, it felt like that person was soul reading, or it felt like there was a bit of witchcraft involved, even though they're Christians. What does that mean? And so we workshop that in our training, and we will talk a little bit about it in the future, the pitfalls and the problems that happen. But yeah, it's a safe environment for you to practice.
Yeah, well, I think I think we've covered that really well, and I think for those who are going to listen to this episode, they'll walk away with an understanding that that they can hear from God, that it is for every person, it's not just for a select few, and that it actually does require a level of training to be able to do it effectively. And I guess that's the message here. So moving along, what's coming up? Have you got any events or anything planned for the rest of the year? Anything exciting?
Yeah. So we run very regular, for 4 to 5 times a year. We run our prophetic development days, and so you can opt in at any time. In the past, we've had a school dynamic where you had to be at the beginning and the end of the school, but now we've changed the format where you can opt in at any time. So we've got a couple more of those coming up in 2025. And then we'll gear up then for our Catch the Up draft in February in 2026. That'll be exciting, as it always is. And
and we do regular Zoom nights as well, so we can jump on Zoom. So if people are at home, they don't have to go anywhere. They can just jump on Zoom and be part of the teaching and training in that form as well. And we have people from all over the world who jump on. And so it's a good way to come and have a taste, I guess, for the want of a better term.
Yeah, being able to practice on Zoom is very wonderful, and being just the accessibility for people to come in and join and to just to continue to practice. But I think also those like development days where people come together face to face and spend a whole day practicing together really does bring a lot out and helps that growth. So I'm excited about the next prophetic development day, I think in August, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. In August.
Yeah.
And then again in November.
Yeah. And so if people want to come along to any of those things, like the face-to-face development days, or they want to join in on one of the Zoom sessions and have a practice, how might they do that?
So there should be links with this recording, and go to our website, destinystrategies.com.au, or our Facebook, Destiny Strategies. Find any of those, whatever you're familiar with, and follow the links.
Let us know, and you'll get the link, and you can join in.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And so at the beginning of this episode, we touched on the book, the launch of a new book. Let's just spend a little bit more time just before we finish this episode talking about that book. What sort of prompted you to launch this book?
It was an understanding that the format needed to be changed, and accessibility. So in the past, we had a prophetic activation school, part 1, 2, and 3, where many listeners have been a part of that in the past. But now, but the accessibility, like I said, you can continue in our prophetic development days, and opt in at any time. But the theory component is now in this book of the prophetic, but then also our dream manual, and we had many years ago had dream CD sets.
Things,
so that's all now in the book, as well as Josh's book, Hearing God Through Numbers.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of content in there. it's almost like you've got the dreams manual, you've got content from what was a manual from prophetic activation school, as well as some content there on how to hear the voice of God through numbers.
Yeah.
So it's really almost like 3 books in one. So it's really jam-packed with so many gems and bits of revelation, and also like just practical tips, which is, you know, it's not all just about revelation. It's about how do I apply these things?
Yes.
Yeah.
So
we've had so much good response on it. We've had so many people to say, "Wow, this is the way the book is written," because it's not in manual form any longer. It's in narrative, or I think they call it narrative form or conversation form of how to, you know, the way you read a book.
Yeah.
And so many people said, "Wow, this is my new go-to textbook. I've read it from cover to cover, but I just keep wanting to go back and check this so I can apply this to my life." And the feedback is amazing, and people aren't buying 1 or 2, they're buying 6. And so it's like another lot of print, just great.
Yeah. Good problem to have is keep getting those printed.
Well, I thought everyone, you know, I thought we lived in an ebook world, but I think, you know, especially because it's more a textbook in a way, or a reference book, people probably want hard copies so they can write their own notes and refer back to it.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do people find that book if they want to have a look at that, or they want to purchase that?
Yeah, so you can purchase it on the website. The ebook is easy to get, but also if you want to ask for a hard copy, there's just there's a price there with postage and handling on it added as well.
Yeah, awesome. All right, well, this has been a really great start and a great first episode. So we hope that, you know, as you're listening to this, that you are taking on all this information and the tips and just engaging with what God is doing in this space and understanding the prophetic in a deeper way. Do you have any sort of last things that you would like to say for those that are going to listen to this?
I think we're living in encouraging times. Be encouraged, and no, I think a lot of people being stirred in hearing God's voice, and even not just for themselves, but also that they would, you know, develop even a proficiency that they know what God's saying and can be part of a community. So yeah, just encourage you in that. Come be part of our community.
Yeah, can be part of it.
There's a place for you.
And look, we would just encourage you to really understand the nature of God, I think. If you understand the nature of God, then that helps us in every area. Prophetic being one. Yeah.
And so, with the end of this episode, our next episode, should we give them a little hint of what we're going to talk about?
Yes, what are we going to talk about?
Okay. What are we going to talk about? We are going to talk about misunderstandings of the prophetic.
Yes.
That's good.
Addressing some of those things.
It comes up in conversation a lot at our schools. It's good.
Yeah.
Thanks, Josh.
All right. Thanks,
okay.
Josh.
Thank you. If you got value out of this episode, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss out on what's next. For upcoming events, training, and powerful resources, visit destinystrategies.com.au.